Aloha Rising and grand tidings, one and all. My name is Kilamal Tengan, and I'm going to be your host for the next 24 days as we go through this experience, immersive as it is, intuitive, powerful as it is profound. The 24-day experience of applied intuition is going to be something that is going to allow you ultimately to connect with that deepest, most intuitive sides and parts of yourself. Now, this is going to be an amazing thing that's going to be facilitated all online. It's going to be providing you with the tools, technologies, and techniques, the very resources to resource or to bring back into those aspects that is both spiritual, meaningful, powerful, and above all else, intuitive. And so as we go through this whole process, it's going to be a mix. Mostly it's going to be here, broadcast both live and then also video sessions uploaded to YouTube. Also, this will be hosted on my Facebook Keolamau page as well, and that'll be a place where you can access resources. Now, there are going to be printed materials that you are going to also want to access as well, and I'll make those announcements and link that into the videos as we go through. All of that is going to be housed on my webpage, which is keolamau.com. Now, part of the real intention of all of this is looking at how we can get connected to the fullness, the entirety, and the totality of who we truly and authentically are. Now, in Western culture, it's not often considered to be very important to look at that aspect of intuition. Yet when we identify and look at indigenous cultures or more ancient cultures, intuition and just being intuitive was a regular part of the day. So my grandmother on the Hawaiian side is the kamaka, eye, if you will. So family of seers on one side. And one of the things growing up that I was often told was that grandma could see things, prophetic happenings that would happen. She would have it in her dreams where if she saw a family member in her dreams, then that meant that something was going to happen to someone in the family. If, for example, she specifically saw her parents and her parents spoke in her dream, then that meant that someone was going to be greatly affected, in the family, and that this was sort of a foretelling. And so as we look at that, though, it was very conflicted because grandma was also a Catholic. And so as she looked at navigating these two parts of herself, one aspect was somewhat withheld, and that was more of the intuitive side. The other part was more revered, and that was more the religious side. Now, the thing about that is that creates an incoherence within a person. And largely, when we have that level of tension that exists within inside of ourselves, that does something to the very cells of our body. And so one of the things that we're really going to be looking at through the course of this experience is what I identify as and look at as coherence. How can we be at a better place within inside of ourselves? And then how does that affect the very cells of our body? Because one of the things about that is when we look at intuition, there are very specific pathways. And those pathways, when we really connect with and comprehend what exactly that means, we're able to access not just periodically, not just sporadically, we can continually and regularly access our intuitive talents. Now, I want to talk a little bit today specifically about the flow for the next 24 days. This is a 24-day experience. And again, most of this is going to be largely online. And so housed here on YouTube, on my Facebook Keolamau page, and then all of the materials you're going to want in terms of printing out, so on and so forth, and to access is all going to be housed on keolamau.com. Now, the online piece is going to be important because you'll have access to this for the full 24-day period and a month after that. After that, all of these materials then become part of a program that's going to be launching in the end of this year. Two, one of the things also to look at and to identify is a state of readiness, all right? And that state of readiness means that we are going to want to have some of the basic materials that will really help you in terms of making the most value out of this whole experience. That's going to be a journal. That is going to be a deck of cards. Now that can be tarot cards, that can be oracle cards, that can even be a regular deck of cards. We're going to be utilizing, though, this. I would highly recommend something that's more resonant. And we're not going to need this until the last week. So you've got 2 weeks to get this piece. So I highly recommend you having a dedicated journal for all of this, because one of the things that we want to do is really to ground these experiences and to be able to process them internally. Being able to process them means that we're integrating bit by bit, piece by piece, our experiences and how it is that we can actually recognize our own internal patterns based upon our own intuitive talents. Now, the cards are something else. That's going to be something that we're going to be utilizing with our work come week 3. And I'll talk about the flow and the schedule in just a bit. So you'll want to have that as well. Finally, you're going to want to have additionally what's called a pendulum. And a pendulum is a length of string or chain or some cord, and at the very bottom has a weight of some sort. And that can be a crystal, that can be a metallic piece. And we're going to be utilizing that again in week 3 and then thereafter in terms of the whole process of accessing one of our intuitive talents. Now, 3, let's talk a little bit about the flow. So as I said, this is a 24-day experience. Now, as we go through this, 24 days is enough that we can actually begin to create habits around our intuitive selves. And so that's one of the first things that we're going to be doing is every day we are going to immerse in an exercise, in an experience around intuition. And as we continue to do that day by day, what we're also going to be doing is solidifying these small yet powerful and profound actions into an actionable habit. And that habit is going to be all around connecting with our own intuition. And as I stated, the intention for me is to allow you to be connected to that intuitive self. That aspect is really going to be important as we go through the 24 days, because we're looking at that 3.5-week period to establish a foundation for habits that help to fulfill what it is that we're looking at in terms of your own intuitive talents. Now, week number 1 is going to be very much focused upon the basics. We're going to be looking at the basics of what is intuition, and when I say intuitive talents, what does that even begin to mean? Okay, all about the basics or our foundation. Now, week 2 is going to go a little bit more into specificity. We're going to look at these specific intuitive talents, of which, generally speaking, there are 4 categories of, and we're going to begin to differentiate a bit. We're going to begin to differentiate by looking at 2 dedicated days for each of the different intuitive talents. Now, as we begin to go into that, some areas are going to feel more resonant, others are going to feel less, and that's absolutely fine. I'm going to talk a little bit more about all of that towards the end of this week and give you more information in terms of how to best identify your specific intuitive talents and what that means in terms of both the strengths and I would say the liabilities that may exist within that. Now, as we get into week 3/3.5, now we're talking about the beginning process of integration. When we talk about integration, we're talking about how it is that we can begin to incorporate these concepts, to assimilate these talents and our own intuition into our everyday life. Often when we think about it, intuition is like, going into a trance state or having a tarot card reading or things that exist kind of over there. For me, my intuition is something that I utilize every single day. In fact, my morning flows, and we'll talk about the importance of this as well, begins with connecting with my specific intuitive talents. Now, one of the ways that I do that, and I do that periodically throughout the day, is by taking time to center my attention, to connect with myself, and to become more coherent And we're going to find that the 3 C's are going to be a reoccurring theme as we create our own methodologies and pathways to connect, to center, and to cohere. Now, what that allows me to do throughout the course of my day is, instead of focusing entirely on what my head has to say, even more so than what my heart desires to express. In Hawaii, we talk about the Na'au, our spiritual center. Chinese, or in Chinese culture, it's spoken about as the Tatien, or our hara, this area within our stomach. And as we look at that, we'll talk more about that as well, what's called the enteric nervous system, a pathway that allows our one of our intuitive talents to speak with power and profundity. And as I do that throughout the course of my day, I check in. Is this a matter of what my head is making sense of what I'm feeling? Or is it what I call direct cognitive knowing? Is this what I really know that I know that I know? And as I check in with that, I can tell where the energy is flowing. My head thinks it's a good idea, and my heart feels that that is right. And then when I just directly know what is best for me now. And so this is what I really hope for each and every one of you who's joining and are going to be experiencing this process with me, is that by the end of this 24 days from now, that you have a deeper connection with your own intuitive self. You're able to center your energy to allow you to become more balanced and coherent, and to access this and integrate this as a part of your daily life. Because as we look at this, one of the things that intuition really allows us to do is to simply be, and in that beingness, make better choices. And these choices are not something of a matter of the head nor even the heart. It is something that we know that we know that we know is correct. And while we may not know exactly why, which we don't really need to, we have a certain feeling, a depth of knowledge that it is what is right for us in our highest and best interests and for the greatest good in this moment now. So I'm excited to be a part of this experience for you. A lot of it's going to be then facilitated again online. We're going to be looking at that in terms of both YouTube. I will link the Facebook page as well. I'll be more actively posting things there. And so if you don't have the Facebook, that's fine. I'll also have things here on YouTube as well. And then lastly, if you haven't yet, go to keolamau.com. Go through the process of signing up, which will create a profile. And based upon your profiles, I'll be sharing things mostly beginning in week 2 on, in terms of PDFs, as well as other materials that you can access specifically through and only through the webpage itself. Additionally, go ahead and get yourself a dedicated journal. The sooner the better. You're going to want to start processing things as early as today. A deck of cards, oracle, tarot, even regular playing cards are fine. Pendulum, I'll link in my video as well on some of the things with that. As we go through the 24-day experience, we're going to be going through with the intention of connecting to that intuitive self. By the end of it, integrating your own intuitive talents into everyday life. Week 1, we're going to go through the basics, the foundation that we're really going to be building upon. Week 2, we're going to go into specifics, those specific aspects of your own intuitive talents. And then 3, as we go on from week 3 to on, we're going to be looking at that in terms of integration and the assimilation of all of these intuitive talents into your everyday life. I'm excited. This is something that I've been studying for a while. Everything from, secret governmental agencies and programs to cultivate psychic abilities, looking at things in terms of how it was classically used in shamanism and ceremonial magic, looking at how that is a part of our own celestial human capabilities. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that, because as we go next tomorrow, this program is different because it has a different starting point than most other intuitive trainings. And that ties entirely to the concept of the celestial human attention. Now, that's a whole conversation which we'll dive into tomorrow, starting from tomorrow on. Every day, for the next 24 days, we'll be continuing on this journey together. So I welcome you. I thank you for accepting this invitation. And I am excited and inspired to walk this path with you. For now, though, that is it. Love and aloha. Take care. And ahui ho.